Are you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out, as always, to my producer today, Moxie. Moxie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking.
And I cannot believe we are into September. I'm not even sure where this year went, but I love today's episode. It's titled Healing from the Inside Out, Awakening Your Inner Comadre. So in this inspiring episode, my guest and I will be diving deep into the power of self-healing, and spiritual connection. Cristal, my guest, will share her personal journey from overcoming childhood trauma to helping others reconnect with their inner strength and divine wisdom. I hope listeners will walk away with tools to awaken their own inner comadre, tap into their intuition, and create meaningful progress in their healing journeys. But first, I want to tell you a bit about my guest. Cristal Baez is an intuitive spiritual life coach. Her path has been a vibrant blend of heartbreak, joy, and growth. Her journey towards a spiritual life coach has been a winding road punctuated by laughter, tears, moments of uncertainty, and profound revelations. Each twist and turn has contributed to the rich tapestry of wisdom she now shares in her coaching sessions. Her passion for guiding others on their path to self-discovery and healing stems from her childhood experiences. Growing up in a first-generation Mexican household, Cristal witnesses the challenge of addiction and codependency. As a young adult, she found herself trapped in an unhealthy relationship patterns, grappling with her identity and the concepts of setting boundaries. And you know, listeners, how much I love that boundary setting that we need to do. But Cristal has really dedicated a decade to working in the field of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. This cause is deeply personal to her, and she has witnessed the incredible resilience of survivors who found strength in their darkest moments. I'm not going to tell you all of her background because we're going to talk about that. So please help me welcome Cristal to the show. Thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Erica. It's an honor and a privilege to be here amongst you and all of your loyal listeners.
Well, this is really near and dear to my heart today because I will need a lot of healing from the inside out over the next days, weeks, months, and years. But I want to hear from you on really sharing your story of healing and what inspired you to step into the world of spiritual life coaching.
Yes, thank you for that question. So it all started at, I had my own, I like to call them rock bottoms, or just that moment of deep needing of something bigger than me. So depends on where we want to start, but my healing journey started when I lost my own father due to his alcoholism. He died when I was 18 years old, and it just from that point on spiraled me into trying to figure out who I was, what was going on. I losing a parent at such a young age really sparked a lot for me. That's where a lot of my unhealthy behaviors um, didn't start there. I mean, I started a lot of those when I was younger, but it really was when it just pushed me into further, especially because there was a lot of self-blame and a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. So I started therapy. I started working towards trying to better myself. until I lost my father to the disease. It just shook me. And so that's where I started. But the thing is, why I mentioned that is that's when I also lost my faith. That's when I lost my connection to a higher power, to something bigger than me. And I remained lost for quite some time until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And I had that moment of like, I need God. I need something. I don't know what it is. I just need something. Please help me figure it out. And it was because I saw myself in that same cycle that I had promised myself as a child and as a young adult that I would never repeat. And there I was doing the same thing. And I said, no, I need help. And so I got down on my knees and I prayed. For the first time in so long, I prayed and doors just started opening up. Things started changing. And it's so phenomenal to see how all of that started. And so fast forward, that's really what brought me into becoming a spiritual life coach. I had my own spiritual awakening. I had this moment of profound sense of who I was and who I am meant to be. And taking the knowledge that I had gained from my educational background, the knowledge I gained from working in the field for so long, I put it all together and now I'm able to help other people because it really like when I got down on my knees, begged God, please help me. The answer was, you already have all the answers. You've been doing this for quite some time. Like, don't forget who you are. And it just spiraled into something beautiful from there.
And you talk about growing up in a household with trauma, and it clearly shaped how you approach, your approach to life and healing. So explain that a little bit more to the listeners and explain how trauma-informed care really played a role in your personal healing journey and how you use it now to help your clients.
Oh, that's a great question because I think that trauma-informed care was one of the concepts I really learned working in the field, especially because the way I like to think of it as not one shoe fits all. What works for one person may not work for someone else. So for example, in the field, we'd always talk about safety planning. A safety plan that we would create for one client was not the safety plan that would work for other clients because of different variables. And that's the same thing with trauma-informed care. When we're caring for an individual, we have to look at all of the layers of their trauma and how that trauma has manifested into their lives. For some people, trauma creates a shield of protection, like a heart shield, like those people can be emotionally distant, not they don't care about their emotions, or they just seem cut off from the world. On the other hand, for me, for example, my trauma caused me to be a people pleaser and codependent. Like I needed other people to love me in order for me to feel valued and to feel like I had a worth. I wasn't cold and distant. I was in your face, loving you. To the point that sometimes I felt like I was suffocating people. And it really just came from the traumas. And so trauma-informed care really brings you the awareness of trauma means different for everyone. It's all about that threshold of coping. And when we pass a threshold, everyone's threshold is going to be different. And I really have been able to see that in with a lot of my clients that I work on one-on-ones or in groups. It's defining your own trauma and seeing how it's manifested in your life. One of the books that I read that I love reading, and I share this with people, it's trauma, how trauma is stored in our body. Um, or no, The Body Keeps the Score is the name of the book. The Body Keeps the Score. And it's so true, like how trauma stays in our body. And if we don't work through it or figure out how to release it, and again, everyone's on a different path. And that's what I've learned about spirituality. Some people love Western medicine, some people love Eastern medicine. How about infusion of both, of a holistic approach? And that's when we can really work through those traumas and see. I like to think of it as the aches and pains of our hearts and our body.
What are some common misconceptions about healing from trauma that you would like listeners to know?
There's a lot. You know, one misconception is that it's a one and done. I feel that that was something that Myself, I suffered from that early on in my own in my own journey of healing, especially because I was going to therapy, I was taking antidepressants, I was doing whatever I could, and it just I would have a breakthrough and then I'd go right back. And it was just like, what is happening? Like, I'm doing the work. Why am I not healing? Why am I not done? And I think that that's like one of the misconceptions of like, this is ongoing. This is not stop. Like, we don't reach ultimate nirvana or ultimate bliss. Like, life continues to happen. There's going to be days that are tough and hard, and there's going to be days that are great. And so it's really about learning how to flow with the cycles of life and prepare for when the cycles are going to be hard and rest during those times and prepare for when the cycles are great and enjoy it and live it. And so I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions I've heard a lot, especially in this journey of um, healing it. It's not a one and done. It's ongoing. It's forever. It just gets easier. And it's the hard work that sometimes turns people away or the fear that keeps us. So that's like one of the biggest misconceptions I want listeners to understand. Like you start it, you're in it for a lifetime.
Absolutely, because it's not, as you said, it's not the one and done. You're going to have those good days, and then you're going to all of a sudden have a bad day that you feel like you're just going to set yourself back. But it's a process. It's just like anything. You need to continue to work through the process and trust the process. And on that note, I'd like to take a quick break, because when we come back, we're going to talk about embodying your inner comadre and learning to trust yourself. But before we go, Cristal, tell folks how they can reach you.
So the best way is through my website. It's www.lincomadre.com, LYNCOMDRAE.com. Best way, or my social media accounts, all of them same. Love your now, comadre.
I love that. Thank you so much. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. That is getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest today, Cristal Baez. Cristal, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. During the last segment, listeners learned about from trauma to triumph, how healing changed your life. During this segment, I really want to get into embodying your inner comadre and learning to trust yourself. So explain the concept to listeners, the inner comadre. What does it represent, and why is it crucial for self-awareness and healing?
Thank you. So first, I want to define what comadre is, especially for the listeners who don't speak Spanish. Comadre is the person who baptizes your child in the Catholic Church. But when I took it, I didn't take it as the aspect of Catholicism. I took it from the aspect of when a person is choosing a godparent for their child, it's someone they trust, it's someone that they care about. And then once that happens, they become really good friends, or they are usually really good friends. That's your comadre. And when I wanted to embody my inner wisdom and I wanted to embody this light in me that I knew is my connection to source, all I could think about was my best friend. All I could think about was, I want to be my own best friend. I want to be that person that when people come, because people always came to me. I mean, I'm a healer naturally. And so when people would come to me, I would help them. But I started to see, well, I want to help myself first. I want to be that best friend that I am for everyone, for me first. And so I decided to that's why I named my business Love Your Now Comadre. And my program, Unlocking Your Inner Comadre, is all about locking that best friend of you inside of you. So comadre is for women, compadre for anyone who identifies as a male, or comextre for my non-binary folks.
And I love that, because I think we all forget at one point in time that we need to love ourselves. We need to be our own best friend, because if We're the person who we're spending the rest of our life with, from the time we are born to the time we die. And if we can't love ourselves and be our best friend and be our number one supporter, who else is going to do that? Right. And it shows us how to not only love ourselves, but how we deserve and want to be loved. And I think that's so important. But how does someone start connecting with that inner comadre? Especially when they've lost touch.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And that's part of my freebie for all your listeners is my
Yes.
journal. I actually break it down into 10 tools. They're easy. They're not easy. I should not be saying easy. Nothing's easy. They're fun if you give it a try. But the first one is connecting in a spiritual level to something bigger than you. Like finding that deepening relationship with a higher power. Whatever feels right for you. Because I truly believe that we are all spiritual beings having human experiences. So how do we connect with that spiritual being in us? Module 2 is all about now starting to know the difference between our intuition, our inner wisdom, our inner comadres, and our ego, because our ego is that part of us that keeps us from growing. It's the fear, it's the self-doubt, it's the imposter syndrome. So start to know the difference between those two. And then from there, I really also encourage a lot of people to do their inner healing when it comes to inner child trauma, teenager, 20-year-old version of you, 30-year-old version of you. No matter what, we get hurt constantly. People think that trauma is, something dramatic or drastic that happens, but drastic things happen every day. And if we don't heal from those drastic things that happen, we can't get to the core root of things. Because yes, we can take care of the root, but we cannot forget about the layers that have added to that root. So I really talk a lot about that and knowing how to heal those parts of us, comfort ourselves mostly, more than healing is the word. Um, Self-love, self-care. Start learning what it means to love yourself and take care of yourself. Setting boundaries. Oh, that's a big module that we talk about is how to start setting those boundaries. Set boundaries within yourself and with the people outside of you and energy that we give out. And then from there, the nitty-gritty starts, and that's really starting to learn more about your ego, learning the origin story. Where did your ego come from? How was your ego made? Those shadow parts of us, those parts of us that we don't really love about ourselves. Well, we get to embrace those parts of ourselves and accept that that's who we are. But how do we do that in a loving way? And then gratitude. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. I cannot emphasize enough how gratitude can start really shifting that mindset. And then forgiveness and releasing, not just forgiving those people around you, but forgiving yourself. And then the last part is really just embracing how once we start changing, it creates a ripple effect to those around us. And that for me has been the most magical part is when I started healing, when I started changing my mindset, when I started changing, I started noticing the people around me. And that's really about the last module of healing La Familia. In order for us to heal everyone around us, it got to start within us. And then you see the magic happen. And so that is how I unlock my inner comadre. Again, the journal's there with journaling prompts. Um, and people get to do it their own way. And I think that's the beauty of it. You get to take what works for you and make it your own way. I've had a lot of people who are not spiritual, and that's okay. Like spirituality doesn't mean for everyone. I had to work through my own relationship with higher power. So I understand. I will share that it made it easier once I had that relationship.
Yeah. And it's important because you said it's a ripple effect, but the ripple's not going to start right until you make that drop. And that drop starts with yourself and that importance of self-love. So, you have that specific journal, right, section about self-love, but how can listeners begin to embrace that self-love in their daily lives and overcome the feeling of that unworthiness, right, to improve their self-worth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to break it down into four. I break it down into four sections because when in the field, when I was in the field, we talked about a lot about self-love and self-care. A lot, a lot, a lot. And I never understood it because for me, when I thought of self-care, I always thought of getting massages, getting pampered. As a single mom, I don't got time for any of that. So I was like, that's not self-care. But then I started to realize, okay, maybe if I make it differently, I started seeing self-care because in order to get to self-love, we got to do the self-care first. Because again, we care for the people we love. So if we take care of ourselves, that in turn shows that we do love ourselves. So it has to start with the caring for ourselves. And I break it down into four modules, or not four modules, but four pillars. Because just like a table, we need to have a sturdy foundation. So I see that we have a mental pillar, an emotional pillar, a physical pillar, and a spiritual pillar. And it's really looking at how can we take care of ourselves with these four pillars, meaning how can we fill our cups? What are you doing to emotionally fill your emotional cup? What are you doing to physically fill your physical cup? What are you doing to mentally fill your mental cup? And last, what are you doing spiritually to fill that spiritual cup? Because self-care is not meant to be a chore. It's supposed to be parts that we do for ourselves, that we kind of show ourselves gratitude, show ourselves appreciation, show ourselves that love. Maybe sometimes it's just unplugging, turning off the TV and just sitting in silence. Sometimes it's just going for a walk. Sometimes it's also just calling a friend and telling them, I'm having a really bad day. And like having them hear you out. Self-care does not mean it has to be this extreme. It's how can we weave it into our day where it just becomes a part of us. Just like we care, just like as a single mom, as I care for my kids, make sure their needs are being met. I got to do the same for me. But it takes practice and it takes a lot of learning. I also do encourage people to start looking at self-discovery because I think that was one of my challenges in self-love and self-care in the very beginning was I didn't even know who I was anymore. I had been married, I was going through a divorce, I was a mom. Like it was like, well, who am I? What do I even like? And so a lot of the times it's also starting from there of like, try it. You never know. You may hate it, you may love it, but you'll have to know. And so now I know more about myself. And so I know what works for my self-care, which that turns into love.
Yeah, and that's so important because especially when you say to weave it in so it's part of your everyday life. And that is what self-care is all about. Because if you are taking the time to care for yourself and show yourself love, again, doesn't have to be these major spa weekends, right? Because how many times how many of us really have time for that? Don't get me wrong. I love myself a good massage and all that, but it's that 10 minutes outside sitting in peace, drinking your favorite beverage, whether that's tea, coffee, wine, whatever that might be, right? And giving yourself a time to reflect, and be honest with yourself. And I think sometimes self-love can be hard because you don't trust yourself, right? You don't have that self-awareness. You don't, I've done all these things wrong. I'm probably going to do something wrong again. So before we go to break, why is trusting yourself one of the most powerful tools in the healing process?
Because we take away the power that our ego has had. Because
Yes.
that's why learning the difference between ego and your inner comadre is so important because our ego convinces us that we're not trustworthy, that we're not worthy, that we're not valuable. Because our ego is my thoughts, our ego is born from our trauma. Our ego is there to protect us. And if something horrible happened to us, if something bad happened to us, our ego has somehow convinced us it was our fault. It was something we did. And it wasn't. It's sometimes just that's part of life. And if we take that power away from ego and give it to our inner comadres, that's when we start to learn how to trust ourselves. But we got to start learning how to tell the difference between the two because our ego can also manipulate us and make us think like it's an intuitive thought like no, don't do that, it's a bad idea. And it's like no, like it's a good idea, we just got to take a leap of faith, but it's hard to take leaps of faith if we don't trust ourselves. So it really
Absolutely.
is, it's all ego.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about navigating life and ups and downs and what the spiritual tools for resilience can be. But before we go, Cristal, tell listeners again how they can reach you and get that free journal.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's through my website at www.lincomadre.com, LYNCOMDRAE.com. And it's right there, free journal. You just click it and you'll get downloaded, no strings attached.
Thank you so much. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Cristal Baez. Cristal, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah.
During the last two segments, we talked about from trauma to triumph, how healing changed Cristal's life, and embodying your inner comadre, learning to trust yourself. And during this segment, we're going to talk about navigating the life's ups and downs and the spiritual tools for resilience. So, Cristal, I think just right off the bat, how do you help your clients develop that resilience and that courage when they're facing life's challenges?
So I'm going to use your last tagline of on your tagline of letting go and letting God. That is, and so this is where I bring in spirituality of when we want control, when we want something, again, our ego wants it in a specific way. This isn't the life I wanted. It's like, how about you let it go? Let it go and let go and let God. Let go and let your higher power just take care of it and figure it out. But that's really hard to do. That is really hard to do. And the way I teach my clients is by myself embodying it. I don't just say I let go and let God. When I say I let go and let God, I genuinely mean I let go and let God. I take leaps of faith, and they're scary. They're not easy. I took a leap of faith last year when I decided to create this business. I took a leap of faith when I decided to leave my 10-year job. I took a leap of faith when I decided to get a divorce. I take leaps of faith and just trust that God's going to help me. And so that's like how I really encourage my clients to start practicing small. It's not about, okay, leaps of faith is not just jump off the deep end. Get your feet wet. Try a little thing. One of the things that I enjoy, and I tell a lot of my clients, when you go and do a Starbucks order, or you go to a fast food restaurant, or you go to a restaurant, tell the waiter, tell them, pick for me. You tell me what it is. Tell me what you think I should be drinking or eating. They're going to think of like, are you sure? Because again, we love control. But once you give something or someone else that control, you start to learn. One, you learn more about yourself. When I started doing that, I discovered I really don't like coffee because some baristas would give me some crazy coffee orders. And I'm like, I don't like coffee. And so I learned that about myself. I didn't like coffee. I thought I did, but I didn't. And I started to learn what I did like and what I didn't like. And so that gave me the tools to start setting my own boundaries of when I would go to somewhere to eat. I was like, I don't like this, I don't like this, but I don't know what else. So what do you recommend? So that kind of like is a little tool that starts helping meditating, praying, journaling. Just the main thing is processing the feelings that we have because feelings are going to happen. When life is up and down, it's going to stir up emotions. It's going to stir up feelings. It's going to trigger those wounds. It's going to trigger those traumas. And the best way is to release it, let it go, find ways to process it. And so for many people, it really is just even talking it out or journaling it. Or I always say, let's get it out of your body. Because again, as I said earlier in the few segments ago, trauma's stored in our body. And so how do we release it? That's up to you. But we got to release that trauma one way or another.
Now, it is that surrender and acceptance during the healing journey, right? And the whole process itself. And you talk about letting go and that need for that. But why is letting go so hard for people? And how can we just start practicing besides just the let somebody pick, right? To just let go and let God, right? So how do we do that? I mean, why is it so hard? Besides the fact of the ego, right? I mean, from a control person, right? I know I like to try to control things, not necessarily people, but like I want to know the plan. And sometimes I gotta just this was not part of the plan and I just gotta accept it. But how do we do that?
Oh, that's a very good question. Hence why I really go back to deepening your spirituality, going back to module number one in my program, because if we do not have a relationship with something bigger than us, how can we let go? Like let go to what? And I think that that's one of the modules that I really emphasize the most importance because for me also being a control freak, for me also wanting to have control, when I had this idea of let it go, I'm like, let go, like let it go to who? Let it go to what? And so when you have this relationship with a higher power, it literally is here, higher power. I'm going to give it to you because I trust you, because I love you, because I know that you and like, I know you have my back. But in order to but you have to start that relationship. A relationship with something bigger than you is really going to start creating that trust one within yourself because once you realize oh wait there's a spiritual part inside of me so then that's where that trust within yourself starts again but it's learning it's really deepening that relationship with a higher power deepening that relationship with something bigger than you and being able to start letting go from that point and also compassion, self-compassion. Letting go does not necessarily mean, okay, I'm done, I'm over it. It's not about getting over it. It's not about it really is about sometimes it's one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time. Sometimes it's one breath at a time. When I'm having a lot of anxiety and I'm really stressed out about something, I have to take a moment of just say, I need an hour. 1 hour where I don't think about this problem, I don't think about this stress. Just give me 1 hour. And I even set a timer. And then after that hour, okay, let me do another hour. And sometimes the timer goes off and I completely forgot about it. And it's just that was part of my letting, like just letting it, like letting God take it. And really being able to embody that. So that's where I really truly start. And the reason why we have a hard time letting go is again because of that ego. Ego wants control. And it's really deep going in deeper of getting to the root cause of why do we have a hard time letting go? I had a hard time letting go because I grew up in an alcoholic household. I if when things are out of chaos, when things are out of control, I got hurt. So, two and two, if I take care of this, I won't get hurt. So that's how we grow up and that's how we process things. If I do this, X will not happen. But when life still happens, that's when we start to say, wait, I was controlling all of this. Life is still a mess. What's happening? And that's when the self-hatred and so it's all really cycles. But that it really it's all about how we perceive the control we do have. And here's the thing to everyone, control is an illusion. We don't have control over anything, nothing. And once we really get to start seeing that, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's true.
And I think in moments of uncertainty and stress, it's so hard to let go because we're just grasping for something to make sense. So I know you have your unlocking your inner comadre, the program to help really build that strong foundation for navigating life's ups and downs. And it's really hard for folks in the times of uncertainty to gain that spirituality or that sense of peace. What tools or practices do you use or would you recommend for folks who are really having a hard time with that? I mean, for me personally, right now, I'm having a hard time with that. I don't understand something. I want to, why didn't I see it? Trying to figure this all out. And to me, I'm grappling with the sense of how do I get that spiritual connection, right? Personally. So how do we make sense of it? And what tools and practices can somebody use to get to that point?
Yeah. As harsh as it sounds, especially when we are going through the dark through dark times, everything happens for a reason. There's lessons there. And sometimes we don't want we don't we we don't like to hear that. We don't like to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, if this happened, like, what kind of reason is there with this bad thing that happens to us? When my father died, like that hurt, like it hurt tremendously. And I was so angry at God. I was so angry. Like, how dare you take my father away? And I didn't like, that's why I did not deal with that for years until I got to a place where I'm like, I need something bigger than me. And so it really is about, if spirituality is not the route, because whatever relationship someone has with their higher power, that's okay. It's really about again, going within yourself and finding, okay, but how can I find peace in this? How can I find serenity to this? Acknowledge the pain. The pain's not going to go away. Acknowledging the hurt, acknowledging the fear, acknowledging it, seeing it, and then saying, but what can I do? Like, what is in my control? Because with fear, we have two options. We either face it and rise, or we say F it and run the other way. Those are our two options. That is what we have control over. We don't have control over how life is going to happen and unfold, but we do have control over how we're going to react. And if we want to react with self-compassion, that's okay to start in that place. It's all about just being gentle with yourself and loving yourself, and understanding that some things we don't need to understand. It's the human in us that wants to have all the answers and wants to have
Yeah.
all of this, like, well, if why did this happen? Why did that happen? It's like, it's bigger than you. And it's not yours to know. And again, logically we want to make sense. So what I started doing, I just started going outside more. I started connecting with nature. I started really have, like, I didn't, it's so funny. I actually did not have a relationship with God. For me, it was, I just had this relationship with something, and I would just talk to it when I was outside. I would just tell it. I would actually curse at it, be like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. Like, how effing dare you do this to me? Um, Cried out, and then after that, and then I felt better. It's almost like a relationship with a parent. Like, you get to be angry at your parent, but that doesn't mean you stop loving them. And I feel like that's the same thing with any sort of higher power. It's like we get to have these emotions because that's what makes us human. And then just would continue moving forward. So I hope I was able to answer your
Yeah,
question.
no, it is. And it's feel the feels and then move on, right? You're not getting, like you said earlier, it's not that you're over it. It's not about getting over it. It's how do we get through it?
Mhm.
So I think let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to finish out the show with creating progress, not perfection, and the steps towards authenticity. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, you can go to getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips, special events, and pricing for upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Cristal Baez. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Tell listeners how they can learn more about you, contact you, and get that free journal we talked about earlier in the show.
So yes, the best way to get the journal is through my website at www.lincomadre.com. Or if they want to get a hold of me, also through my social media, all of my handles across the board are Love Your Now Comadre.
Thank you so much. So during the last few segments, we've talked about the trauma to triumph, the embodying your inner comadre and learning to trust yourself, and navigating life's ups and downs, and spiritual tools for resilience. And this last segment, I like to really wrap it all together and talk about creating progress, not perfection, and those steps to authenticity. And I know sometimes I strive for perfection, and we can't. We're human, right? We all make mistakes. We are not perfect, maybe perfectly imperfect. But so, how can someone start embracing the idea of progress over perfection in their lives, especially when they're always striving for that perfection?
No, absolutely. Self-compassion is always the first thing, giving yourself a lot of grace. I also struggled with that a lot. It's to this day, I still struggle with it. I'm definitely, it's not a lesson that has been mastered. And it's going to be a lesson that I will be working on forever, because I also grew up with this idea of having to be perfect or having things to be done the right way. Um, so the first thing is a lot of giving myself a lot of grace, giving myself a lot of self-compassion, being kind to myself, being gentle with myself. On the times that I do mess up, okay, I messed up. Let's try again tomorrow, you know? And that's one thing I always tell a lot of my clients, especially when they're doing so good and then they feel like they have a setback. I'm like, that's okay. Setbacks are part of the healing. Setbacks are meant to happen because then from there you learn and you grow. And that is really how we move forward is what did you learn? And how can I do better next time? Now, how can I be better? How can I be perfect? It's how can I do better next time? Because the more you know, the better you do.
Absolutely. And it's when you make mistakes or you have those setbacks, those are learning opportunities, right? Those are stepping stones. We use those to get to our next goal, right? Our next level. So tell me, I mean, I'm sure you have them because I think we all do, but talk about your own relationship with perfectionism and how you overcame that pressure to be perfect, and maybe even how you use some of those in your unlocking your inner comadre program.
So I struggle so badly with needing to be a perfect mom because I have this idea of I don't want to mess up my kids the way I got messed up. Very blunt. Like I don't want to mess
Yeah.
up my kids, and so I have this idea of like I just need to be the perfect mom. I need to be there, and I need to do this. But when I started to see like that, I like those expectations that I was putting on myself, they were hard to meet, especially being a single parent, especially being a single parent to two kids in the foster care system who have their own set of like I was setting myself up for failure. And so one of the things I started doing was I just got to flow. I just got to let go and let God my own kids. Like I you are going to do your own thing and I just have to accept it for what it is and not feel like I need to control this. So it's going back to this whole idea of control or illusion of control. And so what I had this actually this summer was when I really had this a moment of I can't do this. And so I went to prayer. I went back to asking my higher power, help me figure this out because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to figure all of this out. I know I have my tools, but there's still something that I'm missing. And it was just that reminder of, again, take care of yourself, put yourself first. When we mess up, be gentle, be kind, talk to yourself the way you would talk to your friend who messes up. Yes,
Yeah.
you get to be firm and like because it's as a people pleaser for me, I've also had to learn of I also have to be firm and loving. It's not just about it's not one extreme of being coddling or the other extreme of just being cold and being mean. It's the middle of I am firm. You messed up. Okay. Now get yourself back up and go. Like keep going. Don't stop. But doing it in a loving, gentle way. And so I cried. Oh, I cried. During the times where I mess up and I'm not the perfect mom, I admit it. And I'm like, well, I messed up. I did what I didn't want to do. And I just cry it out, let it out, release those emotions, and then try again the next day. Owning up to it. I think that has been something else that has really helped me is when I own up to it, when I own up to my imperfections, instead of hiding from them or instead of pretending that that didn't happen or instead of carrying the shame, I own it. I messed up. What's
Well,
the
and
worst
that's
that's going
just
to
it.
happen? Mhm.
Right. And I think that's just it, because personal growth is a beautiful process, but it's messy. It takes a while. It's a continued process, right? It doesn't happen overnight and it never stops. And, some of these are very small, tangible tips that listeners can start doing right now to really live more authentically. Embrace your failures, embrace your weaknesses, because you just as much as you embrace your strengths and move forward. What is, I would like listeners to hear just one more final thought and encouragement on how do we really own our journey of self-discovery and healing?
How do we own our journey? Well, number one rule, do not compare your journey to anyone else's.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Comparison
big
is the
one.
thief of joy. Comparison is
Yes,
such the thief of joy.
yes. That's the big one. Don't get caught up of, oh my gosh, Sue Ann is doing great. Joe is doing wonderful. Why am like, no, everyone is on their own path. And just what you said earlier of we are the we are stuck with ourselves for the rest of our lives. We can have people in and out of our lives, but the person that's always going to remain with you is yourself. And so don't compare your journey. Don't look at what everyone else is doing. But like find what works for you, and learning to trust your intuition can really guide you, because I ended up making it my own. I didn't like I took what I learned in therapy, I took what I learned in school, I took what I learned in the field, I took what I learned in coaching, and I made it my own. And then from there I was like, wait, this works for me, maybe it'll work for someone else. And if
Yeah.
it works for other people, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too, because they have their own journeys. So always focus on you. Don't get caught up in the comparison game.
Thank you again, Chris, for being on the show today. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any of today's episode or want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Before I sign off, ask yourself if you are living a rooted life. If the answer is no, set up your free Empower Hour call with me. No charge, no obligations. Go to getrootedradio.com to find out how I can help you take action now. And if you are ready to live, love, and let go, then my new award-winning book and companion workbook, The Rooted Life, Live, Love, Let Go, is for you. Check out the bundle deal at getrootedradio.com under the author section and order your signed copy today. One last message. If you are hurting, please know the world is a better place with you in it. Reach out for help. You can call or text or chat the 988 Suicide and Crisis line 24 hours a day, and the cost is free. Or text HOME, that's HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through Crisis Text Line. It's a global not-for-profit organization, free, 24/7 confidential. Again, 988 Suicide and Crisis Line, or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing day. Know that you are loved. Let go and let God, as we said earlier today. I'm looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.